welcome to the Mission Design Workshop. This is part 2. This is going to be covering running missions for Black Shark Den specifically. So in the multiplayer setting, considering different flights, running the mission as AMC, setting debriefing, all sorts of stuff like that. So when you look at the expectations, or the overview, of this workshop, we're going to split it up into about 4 sections here. So the first section is going to be expectations. That is what people at Black Shark Den are expecting, or what you may think that they're expecting. What it really is what we're expecting of you in regards to making a mission. So to keep the expectations clear, I always say start small, start simple. You got your planned date, the standards you got to follow, being flexible in the turnout, making sure that your mission is on time, and a couple different ideas of what kind of missions we like to run here at BSD. And then we're going to look into setting up the mission. So we'll talk about the stuff that's required for a mission to run at BSD, the objectives and goals, the FARP, and any contingencies that you might need for when stuff goes wrong in a mission, or something doesn't work the way you want it to. And then we're going to talk about the briefing, so what goes in the briefing, template that we use for briefings, the planning phase of the mission, so pre-mission planning the flights and stuff, and then how to post it on the website here. And lastly, we have running your mission at Black Shark Den. There's a couple things that you need to do beforehand, just with a dedicated server, and then once everybody's here and it's time to go, then you're going to run the Hasty crew brief. So you're going to brief your flights on the mission, and any of the flight plans that you've made up, or that people have made up for it. And then we're going to talk about running as command, because unless you have a dedicated AMC in your mission, you're probably going to be the one who's working as command in these missions, and it's a bit daunting at first, but it's pretty easy once you get the hang of it. Then we're going to talk about using the Game Master script to help you when things don't work out the way you want them to, and just ways or tips on keeping on time and running a debrief. So just a quick, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but a quick overview of this. Is that you may feel like the expectations for organized missions are pretty high at Black Shark Den. This is not true. It's not the mission itself that people have their expectations in, rather it's the expectations of the other pilots. So even if it's just a simple mission, picking up some troops while fighting back other troops in the bush and then returning to base, like we did in the first tutorial video, something like that. It's quite a simple mission to run at BSD, but it's totally okay to run it because people are here to fly with others and fly with the SOPs. The mission is just the stage for it all. So that's where I say start small, start simple. You don't need to make anything big and fancy to be your first mission, especially not your first mission. You could even only include a single airframe, such as UH or OH or AH, whatever platoon you're part of, because you know that that platoon's abilities, and it's easier for you to make the mission. As you make more missions, or you get more people involved, or you spend more time at Black Shark Den, or all of the above, you'll start learning the different ways other helicopters can be utilized, and that'll make it easier for making missions that include other aircraft. The first mission I ever hosted here, it was this Desert Rhinos. It's an exercise for the Huey platoon. It wasn't anything crazy. It was just you started out at a FARP, and you had to go pick up some medevacs from this area, and it was a little bit hot. And then there were a couple BTRs that made it a hazard that you had to go around them to go from 4 and 3. Had a decent turnout. I think 6 people showed up. Very simple FARP. I had a pretty slim amount of slides in here. I mean, I just had situation, what we're doing, the goals, who's showing up, what the FARP looks like, what our communications plan is, the weather, and a quick note that there's just to avoid the other settlements. And then just one more thing about the types of enemies that you might see. That was it. That was my mission. It was short, it was simple, I didn't put too much detail into it, and it was one of my better missions that I've run at Black Shark Den, honestly. Like, there's been some missions that went to complete trash compared to that mission. And they were like really big and complex, and that was part of the downfall. So that's why I always say, start small, start simple, and you can get a feel for how things run from the other side, from the command side of BSD. Now you want to go to big and detailed as you've made more missions, that's absolutely okay too. If you start feeling you're comfortable and you start feeling like you can go bigger, then by all means start doing that. Just know that there's a few more things you need to know and be careful of, because A, it's very helpful if you know what the other platoons are capable of doing and how they perform. Then you can put them to work where they do well at, instead of putting them to work at something that they've never done before, or that they're not so good at doing, such as if you task a Hind with attacking a SAM site, you might have issues with that. But yeah, once you start understanding stuff like that, then you can start going to bigger missions. A couple tips when you do make a big mission is definitely post it at a minimum of 2 weeks before, if not longer, so that you can give people time to sign up, get their real life sorted out. And then, especially if you're having other flights do the planning, gives them time to get together and make a plan. That's when we go to number 2, having dedicated flight leaders. So you make the mission and the goals and all the moving parts, but leave the planning task or job up to the flight leaders. Let them do that. It'll save you a little bit of work off your shoulders, and it gets other people at the squadron involved, making the mission a little bit more immersive and feeling like it's a big operation, which is what everybody loves to do here sometimes. Make sure you have lots of contingencies available, so when something goes wrong, you have a backup plan. So if, say, you have a trigger that didn't go off when it was supposed to, could have been a human error, could have been something wrong with the multiplayer, could have been a number of things. You have a backup plan so that the mission doesn't have to suddenly be closed because a crucial element didn't go off. And then lastly, be available to ask questions or answer questions before the mission, especially in the planning phase. That way people who are doing the flight planning, if they run into an issue, they're not sure about something, maybe it's the intel of the enemy or the type of terrain, any risks, hazards, stuff like that. You can be there and say, yeah, we have intel for this, or sorry, the intel for that's not available. But just being there to help them with the planning phase is quite important. Otherwise, it can get quite frustrating if somebody has a question and you don't answer it for 2 or 3 days. A couple more expectations here. We talk about the planned date. Any mission should be at least 1 week. Preferably longer than that. The bigger missions is where I say 2 weeks, but any missions, like a smaller mission, you could get away with posting it at least 1 week in advance. But I recommend at least 2 if you can. That way it gives people time to prepare, and if they have to sort anything out in real life, they can do that. And it gives you time to further test and refine your mission, make sure that it's ready to go. In regards to the standard operating procedures of Black Shark Den, make sure you guys are familiar with them. It'll help you plan your mission so that when people are flying in it, they they know what they can expect in regards to what they need to do. So say you have a route that you plan for somebody, make sure that you've got the flights planned in accordance with the standard operating procedures, and the if there's a security operation, make sure you're following those procedures as well. That way, once people go out there and they start flying the mission, you're not having to say, sorry, we need to start doing it a different way. You're doing it the way that Black Shark Den is used to, and it makes things run a lot more smoothly. Make sure if you do have some sort of special procedure going on, something unique that's not covered in our SOPs or our TTPs, that you do have it outlined very clearly on what the expectation and how to do it is. If it's some strange maneuver with illumination flares and smoke flares or something, or smoke rockets or something like that, then you've got that how to do it or how to execute that maneuver outlined. And then lastly, make sure you trust that people know what they're doing. You don't need to outline everything. If it is a specific procedure, yes, outline everything. But if it's something that's covered in the SOPs, trust that the pilots know the SOPs. If it's an RL2 mission, for example, they all should know the basic RL2 standards. So trust that they know that. And if they do have questions, they'll ask. So you don't need to go overboard with the procedures either. The turnout can be quite a challenge sometimes. So you got to be flexible with it. Often, and there's always seems to be one person that drops out last minute, or one person that signs up last minute, like within the last, 2 hours of the mission, they've signed up for it to show up. And it can throw a wrench in your system if you're planning for a very static, specific amount of people, and all of a sudden the people you're expecting changes. So if you can be flexible in the turnout, then that is a bonus. Of course, you don't have to. If you specifically want your mission to run with exactly 4 Hueys, no more, no less, then you can set that and set the limits in that way. But just be prepared for that last minute dropout and have 3 Hueys instead of 4, because it will happen, or it does happen. You can a couple of ways to prepare for this is adding or removing enemy units the last minute, or with a triggered action during the mission itself. You can add or remove groups or cargoes that need to be transported, such as like a CTLD group on the ground. You can change the amount that are there. And you could even make plans for some airframes to be optional in case you lose an entire flight. So say you have 2 Reapers show up for an attack sortie, and all of a sudden both of those 2 Reapers drop and there's nobody else to fill in those spots, then having that tasking be able to be removed completely from the mission or replaced by, say, a ground unit attacking whatever their objective was, might be the more ideal option, so that when the mission comes around, you're not sitting there panicking, oh god, what do I do? I don't have any attack elements to deal with this SAM site, and everyone's going to get blown up by it. So make a backup plan. It's the bottom line of that one. And then, of course, the window of duration. So I always say the average mission takes about 2-3 hours. Make sure you're not going overtime with that, and make sure you're not going grossly under time either. So I've got a tool here, the mission timing tool. What this is it's a spreadsheet that you can enter times and stuff into. So usually these first 2, the briefing and the join and startup, these are pretty standard times. A briefing should take about 30 minutes, and the join and startup would be usually about 15. And then let's say you have transit to AO. And it takes, I don't know, 20 minutes to fly there. So you put 20 minutes in. How long does it take to spend on station? Let's say doing your stuff in the AO, time on station is about 10 minutes. And then maybe RTB is probably about the same as the transit, so you can set that to down here, 20 minutes. Debrief is about 15, and then always plan about 20 minutes extra just in case. And then you can see that my mission is going to take about 2 hours and 10 minutes to complete. This is just an estimate. Don't plan that it's going to take exactly that amount of time, but this tool is to help you estimate how long it's going to take you to complete your mission. So if you're aiming for that 3 hours, maybe you could add a couple things here. Maybe you could say, oh, they need to transit to a MASH first, and then be like, that's a 20-minute flight. Oops. 20-minute flight to the MASH there. And then the time at the MASH is another 10 minutes. So we put 10 minutes in there. Nope. And now we're looking at 240 for our total mission time. And maybe the MASH is another 20 minutes out, so it's actually a 40-minute RTB time. So perfect. Look at that. 3 hours right on the button. And that's how you can time up your mission so that you're operating within the window. Okay. So remember, this tool includes a briefing and a debrief. These are usually pretty standard numbered, so I wouldn't recommend changing them. So this would be your entire window. So say you have a mission that starts at 9 and you want it to end at 12, then this would be the perfect amount of time for your mission. So when you think about taskings, what are the helicopters going to do? Like I said earlier, it's really helpful to understand what all the airframes are capable of, what they excel in, what they're not very good at. There's a couple tips here on what each airframe or company is good with. Just a couple things I wanted to remark. Attack helicopters, they're pretty good with like deep strikes on SAMs. More specifically, the Ka-50, the Mi-24 might not do so well in these deep strike anti-air hunting missions. Attack is also good with screening and eliminating incoming vehicles. If it's light armor, such as technicals, BTRs, even some BMPs, if you've got a good flight, the Mi-24 does a really good job with this. But if you start going above T-72s, or heavier armor, or you've got anti-air such as Zeus 23, Shilka, IR SAMs, or even radar-guided SAMs, then that might not be the best for the Mi-24. It does really good at pounding the soft stuff, and a lot of it too. And the Mi-24 also takes a good licking, so it can take those 50 caliber rounds and still keep flying. They also do pretty good with search and destroy. K-50's sensors are superior for this, but if you've got a target at a certain area and they need to go find the target and then destroy it, that's a good tasking for the attack helicopters. And if you've got friendly armor that's advancing, they can help support them punch holes through the enemy lines. Attack helicopters are also great with security operations. Technically all helicopters, attack, observation, utility, they all have a role in security operations, but the attack helicopter is the best suited for providing security. So this could be an armed escort of a convoy or attached escort of a friendly flight. So say you have a flight of Hueys flying around and they need to go to AO and they might be encountering some enemies on the way. Then you can send the Mi-24 in there. With them, they can be attached to that Huey flight, and if the Hueys run into any contact, the Mi-24s can go and take care of the contact while the Hueys wait it out. And of course, area security. So you've got a site, maybe like a FOB or a forward position, a friendly forward position. You can get the attack helicopters to provide security there. Once again, screening and eliminating incoming enemies. Observation helicopters are best at reconnaissance and surveillance. Yes, they have weapons on board, but that's not their primary role, is using those weapons. Those weapons are better for maybe coin operations when you don't need an entire attack helicopter, or very fixed single targets. that you only need 1 or 2 missiles for, because the amount of ammunition and ordnance that the scout helicopters can carry is not enough for a true attack role. What they are good at is locating and relaying the position of enemies. They're good at screening, looking for flanks and assaults. They're really good at doing coordinating attacks. So say you have a flight of Mi-24s flying around in the area, and there's a whole bunch of enemies scattered around in an urban setting, or even a town. OH can look for those targets and then call them and say, hey, Reaper, this is Shadow. We've got 2 T-72s southwest corner of the town. They're just under a tree in front of a fence line. You're cleared and hot for those targets. And then the K-50s will be like, yeah, we got those targets engaging. And then it's, especially with the Mi-24s who don't have the sensors to see those targets, calling in CAS aircraft is one of the most effective roles of the observation helicopters. They're also good for looking for an LZ. They know what to look for. Lots of or observation helicopter pilots were lift helicopter pilots once upon a time at Black Shark Den, and they do go through the same LZ training and searching training that we do that the lift helicopters do. So they're pretty good at looking for those LZs as well and making sure those LZs are cold or like within safety, whatever standards of the lift flight that they're requesting. And lastly, they're good at monitoring like a specific enemy activity and movement. So, say you have a facility, a suspicious facility, you can send them in there and they can watch it. And if any vehicles leave the facility, they can follow those vehicles, find out where they're going, what they're doing. Just kind of like spies almost, not actually engaging those vehicles, but just gathering intel. That's the role of the observation helicopter. And going on to utility helicopter, it's mostly transport, if not all transport taskings. Of course, transporting troops and cargo to and from areas, that's the meat and potatoes of lift platoon. They could do sling loading transport. The Mi-8 is better for sling loading. It seems to be more stable. It can carry much heavier loads, and other than the VRS, it's superior at sling loading. Utility helicopters will also insert and support assaulting troops. So say you've got a town that needs to be captured by boots soldiers on the ground. You can send, say, the Hueys, because they do a better job at it. You can send the Hueys in to drop off a load of troops, and then the Hueys will go back in the air and then perform some aerial attack patterns and support those troops on the ground with clearing out any enemies in that town. And last, they can support other helicopters in multiple ways, including CSAR or setting up a FARP or a FOB. They can basically transporting anything you might need to have a fight last a little bit longer. Okay, so let's talk about setting up the mission. Okay, so setting up the mission in Black Shark Den, just a quick review of the requirements. Make sure that you have all your scripts on board. So you got MIST, Moose, CTLD, CSAR, and optionally but highly recommended is the Game Master Functions script as well, for helping you fix things that aren't working. You can, make sure you have a FARP or a starting point. So unless you're starting at an airfield, you're going to need to have a working FARP. So it needs to have at least one Hummer, one tank truck, and one cargo truck, so that the ground services are in full effect. Also, if you want CTLD working there, you're going to need to make a zone with the mission editor called Pick Zone 1. That way any helicopter that enters that zone can pick up CTLD troops off the ground. If you want them to be able to bring CTLD crates, so if they want to bring FOB crates or a SAM system or a JTAC in a crate or whatever, cargo crates, you're going to need to do You're gonna need to place a static object down. Can be anything. Usually we use like a Chinook or a C-130 or a bunch of cargo containers or something that's like cargo-y looking. And you need to name that static object Logistic 1. And doing that allows anybody within 300 meters to pick up CTLD crates or spawn a CTLD crate in front of them so that they can use it. When you put aircraft down at your FARP, you can put them down on helipads, you can put them down on the grass, whatever you want. Right now there's an issue. If you put them on helipads and you use start from parking, they might start under the pads and then explode. So just have them start from ground. So I believe it's called start it from ground, cold, or just start it from ground. And with those helicopters, make sure you name them what their call sign is. So in the group name, you can give them call sign Rhino-1, Rhino-2, whatever your call signs may be. Do not use the same group for multiple helicopters. I believe it's either CTLD or CSAR that this doesn't work for. You have to have your helicopters as their own individual groups. So the group name is the name that they see in the spawn menu. The unit name is not as important. For your mission parameters, I've got a big list of them here on the side. This is kind of the usual parameters that I use when I make a Black Shark Den mission. For an RL2 mission, I usually have all the allies visible in the F10 map. Sometimes I have the Fog of War, depending on what kind of mission it is, but the F10 map, we like to consider it the Blue 4 tracker, the little tablet everybody has in their ground vehicles and command center in the aircraft, or the AMC might have one. This is the Blue Force tracker. It's a realistic device, so generally allies only is pretty realistic for military operations. Otherwise, all the cheats are off, the labels are off. I leave padlock on. I don't know if anybody uses it, but it might be helpful for those 2D users who don't have the luxuries of VR, or maybe they just really like 2D. So if anybody in 2D likes to use the padlock, I still like to have it available for them. Otherwise, everything else is set to be off. Simulated GFX. Make sure random system failures are off. In a combat mission, just helicopters failing out of nowhere is not a. It may be realistic, especially if it's for a coalition that's not very good with their helicopter maintenance. However, it's not really good for the fun factor in a mission, and it's just going to piss people off if their helicopter fails randomly. So make sure that's turned off. Make sure you have F10 map user marks turned on so that people can place markers down and communicate. And I usually have birds set to whatever people choose. I've honestly never seen a bird in DCS, and I've always have it set to 240, so whether this even works or not, I'm not sure, but I usually leave it up to the person to use. Also make sure these two are turned off at the bottom, especially the battle damage assessment. It gets really annoying when you see the amount of damage people are doing to, or the amount of damage you're doing to an enemy or something like that. It breaks immersion, really. When you go to there's like a button that has two flags on it, or you can set command options. Make sure you have Game Master turned on, at least one slot for the Game Master. That way, if something breaks and you need to step out of or if you're flying in a helicopter and you're not running as command, and you need to step into the Game Master to look at the entire map, then you have that option available, because if you don't turn Game Master on, you cannot do that, unfortunately, unless you go into like Spectator, but then you lose the ability to run Game Master commands. So Just make sure Game Master's always on in your missions. And then the briefing inside your mission, you can just kind of type whatever you want in there. Sometimes you can put notes for you to reference. Sometimes you can put a little mini version of your briefing in there. It's kind of up to you what you want to put in that little mission briefing there. Remember we talked about in the first workshop the win condition, the goals and objectives. So when you're setting up a mission, you want to make sure you set it up around the goals and objectives of that mission. So what's the main goal? What is everybody doing? So for example, all the medevacs extract from the AO, or you push the enemy back behind a certain area, or friendlies control an airfield by by 5:30 local. That's the main goal that everybody is working towards, and then the objective is what everybody needs to do. So say 24 more troops are dropped off at this LZ, and it's considered, that task is considered done. And then maybe an SA3 radar, the radar itself needs to be destroyed to consider the SAM site disabled. Or if OH is looking for some guy, maybe they found HVT Jerry. And those are the objectives that each flight needs to do to achieve the overall mission goal. And we express that in the aviation mission commander's intent. So this is just an example of a mission where each flight has multiple tasks, all in order to complete one specific goal, which is to evacuate VIPs, get the hard points established, basically gain control over this the city that they're trying to protect. Okay, so let's open up the mission editor, and we're gonna go make a quick little mission here. Just something simple, something quick. I'm gonna load up the caucuses. You guys can do the same, and let me know when you're all loaded up. Okay. So, got your mission editor. I mean, we've talked about this already. Let's set up a little rescue, or we just did a rescue mission last time. Let's do an attack mission. So let's say there's a compound with a bunch of bad guys. So let's pick our starting point. You guys can pick wherever you want on the map. I think I'm gonna pick probably around here somewhere. Pick somewhere not at an airfield. We want to build a FARP for this. I think I have my forest turned off. There we go. So yeah, pick anywhere in a field that you want to build a FARP. Generally, you want to pick a flat spot. So on the side of a mountain, it's not a good idea. You're probably not going to get anything down there. Even in a hill or a heavily treed area, like it's kind of hard to see them because of the bug, but the trees here, they would not be a good idea to put a FARP in the forest. So I'm gonna pick kind of like this flat spot here. Looks like there's no trees that I can tell in this area. So I'm gonna put my FARP here. And then I'm gonna say a bunch of K-50s are gonna go, or Heinz, or both. They're gonna go and there's a bunch of tanks that are holding this bridge crossing here. So let's say this is where the roadblock is. So we got a little roadblock here that that I want them to destroy. And then just looking at the map, I mean, they've got a bunch of mountains in the way here. So the best route for them probably is going to be going up this valley. So we can have their waypoints along in here. Waypoint 1 at the entrance. And then we could say waypoint 2 or release point 1, where they're going to be cleared to engage, is that final long stretch down the valley. Make sure you guys have a route plotted out. you got your FARP found, and you got your target area, whatever your goal is, put on the map. Let me know when you guys are ready. Okay, so we're gonna start by, I know like I mentioned in the last video to place your target down first, or your objective down first, but we're gonna start in this workshop by actually working on the FARP. So I'm just gonna switch over, we're gonna go back to the presentation here. So let's have a look at setting up a FARP. Now I mentioned you need your 3 basic vehicles. So we've got a Hummer, or Humvee, we got a tank truck, and we got a transport truck. So that's the I can't remember the names of them. We'll look at them in a second here. I've got my helicopter spawns on the ground. They're sitting on helipads. And then I've got a pick zone. So pick zone 1. This is where my helicopters can go pick up their CTLD units. And then I've got my CTLD logistics unit, so that's it's a Chinook, and I've named it Logistic 1. And again, that it has a radius of 300 meters, so 300 meters out from the helicopters where you can be picking up these crates. That's not changeable unless you change the script itself. This is what the FARP looks like in the game. It's pretty simple. Got a couple pads, got your vehicles. I've drawn up a little CTLD pickup area and the helicopter, and that's all you need for a operational FARP in Black Shark Den. And if that's as much as you're comfortable with making, then that's okay. You don't need to make a super fancy Hollywood-style FARP if you're not comfortable or you don't feel like working that hard on one. Now, if you did want to make a Hollywood-style FARP, here's another example. This is a bit of an older FARP that I created, FARP Shiraz. It's kind of more of a fob, but serves the same purpose. You've got the helipads where your aircraft start at. You've got a CTLD pickup area. The little tent there is used for picking up logistics crates. There's a departing and arriving area for aircraft for a traffic pattern. And it's easy to get in and out of the stalls as well. And then of course a little bit more details on the side to make it feel more alive. I've got a FARP tower. I've got some vehicles parked nearby. I've got some tents for sleeping in, tents for working in, a medical area, ammunition storage, fuel storage, and an entrance to the FARP, or the FOB. So you can make your FARP as detailed or as simple as you want. For the sake of the workshop, I would suggest maybe just making a simple FARP. Just place down a couple helipads, a couple helicopters. We're not going to be flying this mission, so I mean you can fly it if you want when you're done, if you have specific helicopters to do it. But you can place down whatever helicopters you feel like at your FARP. So let's jump over to the mission editor, and we'll get our FARP set up. All right, so I'm going to go to my FARP area. I'm going to start off with some helipads. So I'm going to go to the static objects window. Go to heliports, and I'm going to pick the concrete one. So place that down. Let's say we're going to have 2 Hinds doing this mission, so I'm going to have 2 helipads. So I'm going to place them. Actually, these pads might be too small for the Hinds, so I'm going to pick a bigger one. This one sticks up from the ground a little bit. Just be aware of that, but it's pretty good for holding the Hinds on it. These work like that. So I've got my helipads down. Put my helicopters on them. So let's say Dragon 1. I'm going to make sure that I set the skill level of this helicopter to client, Otherwise it's an AI helicopter, and that's not what I want. So if I set it to client, that means a player can jump in that helicopter and fly in it. They default spawn in or get placed in the map as turning point, which means they're flying in the air. I don't want that. I want them to take off from the ground. So I'm going to set that to take off from ground. I'll turn it so that it's positioned with the FARP properly. And then let's say I want to set the loadout, so I can go to the payload. And right now the hind is bugged with the payloads, and you should pick an empty payload. But say it's not bugged, and your flight lead says, okay, let's take some KOMs and ATGMs, and they say, so they want you to put in some rocket pods and some air-to-ground missiles, and then they say, well, I also want only 60% fuel. So then you enter, 60% fuel there. So we got the payload and fuel set up as the mission lead requested, or the flight lead requested. And then I'm gonna go to my channels here. So depending on how you want your channels, you can either leave them as default and just use the default radio channels, or what I like to do is I like to set my channels based on the number, and then that's how I use them in a mission. So we'll say 31 Fox Mike is channel 0, or 30 Fox Mike channel 0, 31, 32, and so on. Whoops. So now all my Fox Mike channels are set up from 30 to 39. And then we prefer 251 usually for a Unicom channel, so I'll set channel 0 over the R863 on 251. I do want the IR suppressors on. I think that there's a bug with Petrovich right now, so we're going to just set his skill to 100%. If we are going to be using multi-crew, make sure you set it to equally responsible, so that the pilot isn't having to fight with a mouse while flying the helicopter, and the whoever's not flying can just take over whenever they request control. I usually turn the NS430 on, and then make sure you hide the boxes in the pilot AI menu. It's some sort of overlay that they have that they don't like seeing in missions. And that's about it for setting up the helicopter. So now that it's been named Dragon 1, I can just select it, hit Control C to copy it, and then hit Control V, paste it on the other helipad, and I suddenly have Dragon 2 with my loadout and radios all set up the same way. Okay, so now I got my 2 helicopters. I need my ground vehicles. So let's put those up. So we're gonna call them the FARP group. And we're gonna go to unarmed. The first, doesn't matter what order these vehicles are in, just as long as you have them, but I usually pick the Humvee as my first vehicle. Then I'll add another one. I'll switch that to the refueler, and then add one more. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Where is it? Refueler, and then my third vehicle will be the M939 heavy truck. If I want to, I can go and change these skins, but I think I'm going to leave them as they are. Put them in some sort of organized order so that they look like they've been hastily parked here. And I don't have any lift helicopters, but if I did, then I could place down my my logistics helicopter. So let's say I want the logistics to be coming out of this Chinook here. I'm gonna call it Logistic 1, and I'm gonna put a zone behind it. Pick zone 1. A nice little decent area behind it for the helicopters to be able to pick up their CTLD troops. Okay. So, like I said, my mission is going to be pretty simple. It's just gonna be, they're gonna go in, there's a roadblock here. Say bad guys, 1. Make them, I don't know, North Korean. And, what the heck do they have? They got some BTR-80s that are blocking this road here, causing a nuisance to the public population. See where my trees are here. So put a few, just a few BTRs sitting kind of. Maybe we'll have one on the bridge. And there's one of the ones behind it. Block on the other side. Okay, so we got a targets on the ground that need to be destroyed. Leave them with their default camo patterns. I'm gonna add just a little tip. When you put ground units on the ground and you attack them from the air, they by default relocate every time you hit them, but only after 10 minutes has passed. This is called disperse under fire. You can go to the advanced waypoint actions here under the waypoint of this group. You can hit add, go to set option, disperse under fire, and I like to set this to 60 seconds. So they're not constantly repositioning every time you hit them, but they do reposition after a small period of time rather than a whopping 10 minutes. So I usually like to set that to 60 for them. And then sometimes, if it's like an anti-air group, then I'll also set their engagement distance to like 80% or so. So we got some bad guys on the ground to engage. We got our route planned. We got our helicopters on the ground ready to go. We're gonna call this attack mission superb. I don't know. I'm not gonna worry about the situation in here. It's just fluff. I set my weather. I don't know, broken. Maybe it's rainy or almost rainy. A little bit of wind coming off the sea there, maybe 4 knots. And change the altimeter. Just 2975, I suppose. Okay, so one last thing when I talked about those parameters. So we already talked about setting Game Master to 1. If you go underneath that Battlefield Commanders to the check mark, reset mission options. We'll just go through this one by one. So we'll leave the first 2 default, allow people to control it themselves. F10 view options, we're going to override it, set it to allies only. No labels. We're going to set all of these on the underneath these to on, except for the birds. Well, I mean, you can even turn the birds on. Probably not that terrible of an idea, honestly. And we're going to turn everything off except for padlock and F10 user map marks. Traffic is whatever you want it to be. Maybe we'll set it to low. But yeah, leave everything else as it is default and the GFX simulation.
Being ignorant, exactly what does padlock do?
So if you're on 2D, padlock allows you to, when you see a ground vehicle on the ground in your 2D screen, you can hit the padlock button, and it locks your view on that ground vehicle, so you can keep an eye on it. So there's quite a few different ways you can set up your contingencies so that when something goes wrong, your mission can go on. The first and foremost one should be realistic mission command type contingencies, so as if it was real life. So say you had something non-technical goes wrong, like a flight gets lost, delayed, they get shot down, anything realistic happens to them. Having realistic contingencies, such as handing that task to a different flight, is important, and it's realistic, and it does not break any immersion in the missions. And of course, it'll save you time and stress when you already have those contingencies in place, those plans on what to do. You can also just cut your losses and move on. You're in control of the mission. You have a say when an objective can be abandoned or not. So let's say there's an SA-10 hunt. It went wrong because all the KA-50s got hit by a AAA trap and they had to RDB. Find a way to get that mission complete with the SA-10 still active. You know, be the tactical strategic mission commander and figure out a way to make it work. If you can't, then there's a few other contingencies that we can use to help make the mission go along smoothly. The first one is hot respawns. This is a very classic contingency for when people's helicopters are lost or when their game crashes to desktop or they get disconnected from network error or whatever happens makes them lose their aircraft. A hot respawn is the quickest way to get somebody back into the mission. Usually these are at the FARP that you start out at, so you can just jump in your helicopter, fix your loadout if you need to, and take off. Another option for a hot respawn, say your AO's half an hour away from base, you can set forward respawn points, and these are they could be tucked away into trees or just along the ingress path. These are kind of unofficial respawn points, not related to the realistic part of the mission. So that, let's say there's not actually a FARP there, but if you need somebody to respawn close to there, you can put some hot helicopters down in that nearby valley, and they can jump back into the fight if their computer crashes unexpectedly on them. Usually if somebody gets shot down by like AAA or something, I don't use forward hot respawns. But again, you're the mission commander, or the mission designer and the mission commander. It's completely up to you how you want to run it. You can create some trigger conditions that when they're triggered, it'll activate something in the mission. So say you have to, say something needs to spawn. You need some friendly units to spawn that are supposed to be picked up out of a building or something like that, and your helicopters get there, and for whatever reason they don't spawn like you planned. You've got this contingency in place that allows the backup to get triggered, and then these friendlies can spawn and the mission can go on. Talking about game master functions, you can use various commands to activate units that are set to late activate. You can use the S command to spawn units around, or any of the other commands you might need to use. Maybe you need to cause an explosion, or an AI helicopter needs to land somewhere. The game master functions, which we're going to review a little bit later, will completely help you out with all that. And then lastly, some restart checkpoints. Sometimes DCS just hates everybody and the server crashes completely. And you're about an hour into the mission. You can have a checkpoint sort of mission that, or a trigger even, that sets the mission up to where you were last. So say your first phase was to destroy a line of enemies at the entrance of this valley, and then the second phase is to bring troops in. Well, you've destroyed the enemies, but the server crashed right before you tried to bring the troops in, then you can set a checkpoint trigger that'll remove all those enemies, and even create some forward respawns for you, and then you can just resume the mission from there. So that's a bit of a I've never honestly used that restart checkpoint contingency. It's not a bad idea to have though, especially when you're starting out and trying to see the limits of DCS, or if maybe DCS just happens to be very unstable at the time that you're making missions. Not a terrible idea to have. Okay, so let's go set them up in the mission editor now. Okay, so my first contingency, the mission commander one. So let's say one hind is lost. They lose control, hit the water here. The FARP isn't very far away, so I'm going to have that helicopter respawn, and the second helicopter is to RTB and rendezvous with the first helicopter. Once he's rendezvoused with the first helicopter, then he can head back up and continue on with the tasking. So that's my mission commander contingency. For my hot respawn contingency, so these are the helicopters that I want to be hot. We'll make a copy of our first helicopter. So now we've got Dragon 3. I'm gonna rename it to Hot Dragon 1, and then I'm gonna set it to take off from ground hot. All of my other settings, so my loadout, my fuel, my radios, and my special settings are all the same. So I've got Hot Dragon 1. Just gonna take it. I got Hot Dragon 2, and now I have 2 hot helicopters. You can even go so far as to putting your hot helicopters spawning in the same place as your regular helicopters, and then just tell people, hey, make sure you spawn in the hot helicopter that has assigned to you, so that you're not having people spawning into each other. I don't have any triggers in this mission, but if I did, let's say I had a trigger for a bunch of friendlies are supposed to enter the zone, and it would, I don't know, say a message like, you did it, good job. And then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, I picked the wrong group and the zone didn't work. I'm just gonna add an OR condition under here, and then I'm gonna go to. So I've got my flag is true trigger. I'm gonna set it to a flag that I'm gonna remember. So let's do like 9991. Then I'm gonna do one more thing here. This is gonna add a radio item to our radio menu. So this is just going to happen as soon as the mission starts. We're going to do radio item add. I'm going to say trigger override. We're going to give it the flag 9991. And this adds a radio item to my F10 menu. So if you hit like your communications menu and then F10 other, you're going to see the radio item trigger override there, and you can select it, which will activate this trigger. So that's my contingency to make sure that a mission critical trigger will fire. I got a backup plan in case it doesn't work. Alternatively, you can use the Game Master script to fire this trigger, and you don't need a radio item. Just make sure you write down the flag, and I'll show you later how you can trigger it. So let me know when you guys have got up to that point, making a trigger contingency for just some random trigger. Actually, I'm going to, just for the sake of making this an actual mission, I'm going to set this trigger up to be an actual trigger that's important in the mission. So I'm going to say these are the bad guy spot. I'll have a bunch of enemies in there. Like I could even just say group is dead with the bad guys, and then the message with like a little jingle can go off. Since I forgot to add my scripts, I'm just going to do that now. So I'm going to name my scripts here, say mist. Oh right, time is more. 1 second. And we'll do a do script file. I'll select mist. So this is from the BSD Mission Designers starting kit, linked from the last video. I'll also link it in this video too. Put that up top. I'm gonna clone it. Say moose. 2 seconds. Then I'm gonna do 3 seconds for CSAR. We're also going to add the sound for the CSAR in here. So to make sure that you have the CSAR sound in your mission, we're going to do sound to coalition, or sorry, sound to country, Ukraine, just because unused country. Then I'm going to go select my CSAR sound. I believe these are included in the starting kit. I'm going to clone that, call it CTLD, make it 4 seconds, select my CTLD script, and then I'm going to call this one, or set the sounds for this one as the beacon, clone that, and then beacon silent. So those are the 2 sounds needed for CTLD to work. Then lastly, the one that's my contingency script, the game master. Give that 5 seconds. I can delete these sounds, I don't need them for the game master script. I'll pick game master functions. So now I've got all my scripts installed, or yeah, put in the mission, ready to go. And just a little adding a note for myself, if say I'm flying the mission, and then I can say GM override, and I can say flag 9991 equals success override. Okay. So now I can reference that flag while I'm flying in the mission if I forget it. Let me know when you guys are all caught up or if you need help with anything. We've got all of our contingencies set up now. Let's talk about the briefing. Talk about the briefing here. You want to make sure that the briefing is concise and covers only the most important stuff that you need to talk about. I mean, you can load more information you want into the briefing, but the stuff that you actually brief to the pilots needs to fit within that half-hour or less time window. Ideally, a mission briefing will go longer than 20 minutes, but sometimes it does, just depending on questions and how complex the mission is. But as a minimum, in any briefing, you need to have the situation, so the story of the mission, the aviation mission commander's intent, so the goals and objectives for each flight, the concept of operations, so like a map showing the routes, points of interest, targets, anything like that, and any notes saying how to execute it. This map also gives people a visual representation of what the plan is and how they're going to go about executing it. You need to have roll call, so the roster for each aircraft, and then the loadouts of their helicopter. People need to be assigned slots in a mission. You need to have a diagram of the starting position, so where the pads are, where the pickup zone is, where if there's a specific refueling area, where that would be too, or anywhere that UH needs to pick up or drop off stuff. You need to have a communications plan, so the radio frequencies everybody needs to be using, both the internal and the guard or unicom or command frequency. And then the weather, so the weather. It's pretty self-explanatory. There's a couple additional things you can consider adding to your mission. So, an enemy likely intent. This page is gives you an idea of what the enemy might be doing. The area of operation could be like a big picture of the entire area, just for situational awareness and eye candy. If you need to outline objectives, you have pictures of the objective, or you need to talk about them, the way you need to attack them, or what needs to be done for those objectives to be completed. You can outline them in an objectives area. There's a timeline of operations page you can add where you can say this specific task needs to be done at this time. When you've completed this task, this is the code word you need to say over the radio to signify this task has been completed. That could be good for time on target, very milsim level type missions. LZ landing plans. So you've got a slide with we've got an example over here. We've got pictures of various LZs and the approach departure route into the LZ, the altitude of the LZ, and the name of it. This is a quick little example of a LZ landing plan you can throw in a briefing. You can be as detailed or as simple as you want with these LZ plans, but the more information, or just make sure your information is useful and accurate and helpful to the pilots, and that's probably going to be okay. You can have target diagrams. So another one over here, you got target. There's a bunch of Scud sites in this this little compound area, and I've got it zoomed in so you can see the Scud sites where they are, and then I have it zoomed out a bit so that you can see the surrounding terrain, and then attack pilots can see, oh yeah, okay, so there's some hills here I can kind of sneak behind to avoid any anti-air threats that might be a hazard to me. You got NOTAMs, so any important notes to inform your pilots about, like avoid flying over towns or stay below 300 feet due to a SAM site or something like that. And then rules of engagement is also something to definitely consider. Do people need to contact you before they can engage something, or can they just fire freely as soon as they see an enemy? That's can be quite important to outline in attack taskings. I just went over this briefing already, but that's the bare bones briefing. You guys can have a look at these later when this is posted. Just open up or go to the slide and click on the picture, and you can open up the briefing, and you can have a look through all the different slides in here, and this is an example of a detailed briefing. All sorts of different objectives, pictures, some concept of operations for each different flight, the timeline, airport diagram, LZ plans, NOTAMs, airspace diagram, all sorts of stuff. This is a rule of engagement, so in this mission the weapons were on hold. You had to transmit a contact report, and then the AMC would tell you what to do. This is the respawn rules, and then that's the end of the briefing there. Okay, so that's just an example of a detailed, complex briefing. We have a briefing template. So this is what we're going to use to build the briefing based on the mission that we just put together here. So I'm going to click on this template here. If I take this this last line up here that says edit, and I change it to template/preview, and I'll link this this specific URL in the video description. You get this this sort of screen that says use template. I just click on that, and it'll create a template of the briefing in my my drive, so I can edit it as much as I want. So you talk about planning emissions, so the loadout, fuel, the route that you're taking, any important notes in the planning phase. There's two ways you can do it. You can either have the flight leader, if you have a big enough mission, you found someone who wants to be a flight leader, they can plan out that that part of the mission, or you can plan it yourself if you're comfortable with planning for that specific aircraft. Generally, the RL1s are the ones who are qualified for planning. RL2s generally, the planning is or tactical mission planning is one of the last things they do before becoming an RL1. So they're usually not as comfortable with doing it. Some are eager and will definitely make a pretty good mission plan for you though, so it's definitely not out of the question. But if you have RL1s, you should consider them first for doing the mission, the tactical mission plan. Especially if it's a large mission, big mission with moving parts, you even have an AMC involved. Definitely consider that to be RL1's RL1 position. But again,
Roger.
if you only have RL2s available and they think that they're comfortable with making the plan, then by all means let them do it too. If you don't have that option, or you just want to make this mission quickly and get it out and get people flying, then you can do all the planning yourself. And we're going to talk about making the plan yourself in a bit here. So if you're making the plan yourself, remember to think about performance and fuel. Think about timing, like how fast the helicopters are flying and if they're going to get there. And then think about aircraft survivability. So you're not going to send in a bunch of Hinds to take care of a bunch of AAAs when the Hinds have to get within AAA range just to take them out. And you're also not going to think about or put Hueys up against tanks, because there's no way that the Hueys are going to be able to take them out unless they're carrying like anti-tank troops or something. Also, don't put their routes through very hazardous areas. If you can put their route through something that the intel says is safe, then do that. If the intel does not know that the area is hazardous, then that's a different story. Okay, so let's go build a briefing now. So there's two ways you can go about making your briefing. You can fill it out manually, which is what we're going to do here. Or you can go to this link. It's going to have a little form that you can fill out, which will automatically do it for you. But it does leave some things for you to clean up after you're done, so just keep that in mind if you decide to use the form. But the form does make it a little bit more user-friendly. So we're just going to delete this first slide. And then let's give our mission a name. So I'm going to say it's going to be called Cool Sortie Number 5. I don't know, just a name. Say it's the 4th of July 2016. Then we have Dragon Platoon flying it. If you want, you can throw a little picture in the background. You have like a picture that you like for the background of your briefing, you can put it in the background here and behind all the text. We're just going to do the bare bones, so I'm going to delete some of the slides that we don't need. So the Air Commission Commander, if you have a big mission, this is definitely something you can use, but we're not going to use it for this one, so delete that one. In the situation, we're going to talk about what's going on. So in my mission that I put together here, we're going to say North Koreans are blocking a town in the mountains with several BTR 80 PCs. Search for and destroy the roadblock. Basic situation. You could definitely get more detailed descriptive if this. Maybe there's a story like why are they here, what are they doing, what problems have they been causing, you know. This is where you get really creative with your mission, but for just a basic situation, I'm just going to write down what's going on. Let's go over to the concept of operations here. This is just an example. You can select that all and delete it. Get rid of the word example in here. I can't really show this in the stream, but if you hit Windows symbol and you type in snipping tool, you can grab the snipping tool out, and then if I go to my game and I want to take a picture of my AO here, I'm going to switch the game here for you. And I want to take a picture of my AO, but I don't want them to see the bad guy spot and stuff here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my map options with the key. I'm going to turn off my user objects. And then I'm going to take my snipping tool, and I'm just going to take a snip of my entire AO here. So probably not going to be able to see this in the screen, but it's I'm taking a box of the AO, and I'm going to right-click the picture that I've snipped. I'm going to hit copy. Then I'm going to go back to my briefing here, and I'm going to hit Control V to paste it. So I've got this snipped picture of my area, or my AO. Then I'm going to turn my user objects back on so I can kind of see what's going on here. And then I can just start drawing in the different stuff on my briefing. If you scroll down on the right side all the way to the bottom, should be, if you've deleted the same slides as I have, should be slide 27. You'll see this graphics toolbox. It's got a whole bunch of little bits of art, platoon patches, stuff like that for you to use in your briefing. So I'm going to grab the FARP one and maybe the mechanized infantry one. And I'm going to copy these. I'll paste them in here. Maybe shrink them down a little bit. So the FARP is just at the bottom of Kilo November 62 for me. And all the BTRs are kind of up in this bridge area here. So for the plan of my helicopters, I'm going to say I'm going to go to the line tool and grab the curve. Then that's going to allow me to draw this arrow, so I can just click from the FARP, and I'm going to start having this this line attached to my cursor. And I'm going to click kind of the points, and it'll sort of curve around the points that I click. And then once I reach the end, I'm going to double click. I'm going to create a line. Maybe I'll thicken the line up a bit, change it to the color blue, then add an arrowhead to the end of it. And then now I have my route planned. Last thing I can do, maybe I'll add a text box, and I'll say search for and engage all BTRs at Kilo November 709-600. Set text size to a bit. Maybe I'll change it to Courier. Get bold. And I'll even give it an outline. Then I'm just going to add an arrow so that it can say what it's pointing at. There we go. So now we have a concept of operations. So somebody's going to look at this briefing and say, okay, I started up at the FARP. I'm going to follow this this curved line all the way up to my target area. And then I'm going to look for, engage all the BTRs here. And then when I'm done, then I guess that's time for me to RTB. So you got a basic concept of operations for your mission. Let me know when you've gotten that drawn up for your mission there. Okay, so I finished my concept of operations. You know, people know what they got to do. I'm going to go to the commander's intent. So what's the goal? Clear the roadblock in the mountains. I've got dragon flights, so we're going to call it Dragon Aviation Commander's Intent. And they're going to do basically what I said in the concept of operations there. Just search and destroy all BTRs blocking the route at the target area. I'm going to get rid of these other ones that I don't need here, because I've only got one flight. Pretty it up a bit.
It's a pretty robust package.
Yeah, it's pretty packed full of information. So I'm not worried about the timeline of operations, but this is where you would enter in like the time at which stuff happens. Maybe the X check. These are the things that you'd say. So say the commander says the word Florida, then serial 1 and 2 are going to take off. And then when serial 1 and 2 reach RP1, then they're going to call Georgia. You know, stuff like that. Make sure that they do it within 35 minutes plus H hour, or H hour is 1930, or, you know, just a bit more complex, more realistic way of operating a mission is by using time on targets. And this is where you're going to express those times. So we're going to go to roll call here. I don't use KA50s. We are using the hind, so we'll get rid of everybody but the hind. We don't have any fixed wings, so get rid of that. I've only got 2 hinds, so I'm going to get rid of these last 2 areas. Just select the whole column, get rid of the pictures. And we'll say this is John flying this one, and then Doe is flying the second one. Call sign is Dragon. Maybe they got 4x ATGMs and 40x S8 KOMs for their loadout. And copy that, paste it in the bottom here, and then their fuel was 60%, I believe. Okay, so now I've got my roll call slide done. I've got my helicopters with their loadouts. They've got the call sign. The people who are flying those helicopters are penciled in. Their loadout is set and their fuel is set. So that summarizes my roll call page. Oops. Actually, more turned this way. And because the wind's coming out, we're going to say that they can take off into the wind. Just to kind of showing people how to use the FARP. So we'll call it FARP Dallas. The actual location of the FARP, I'm just going to quickly jump into my mission editor here and grab the location of it. Probably best to use MGRS, honestly, rather than lat longs, unless there's a valid reason to be using them.
Yeah, I'm an MGRS guy.
Yeah. Most people use MGRS at Black Shark Den, so it's the best one to use. Altitude is 792 feet. If I have a radio frequency there, maybe I'll have Fox Mike homing beacon. Maybe I'll say it's 550 ADF, 550 kilohertz ADF. They got fuel and ammo, so we'll say yes to both. And since it's kind of on the grass, then is a chance for brownouts. So that's my super basic FARP diagram. You can also use pictures of the FARP or whatever, just anything to kind of show people what your FARP looks like and what they need to do to enter, leave the FARP, and where they need to go to get any CTLD assets.
Do you know, is there a simple way to add a beacon to a FARP?
Like a homing beacon?
Like an ADF?
Yeah, I'll actually show you that right now. So let's switch to the mission editor here. And we're going to use the Humvee. In a single player setting, you can use an advanced waypoint action for this, but in multiplayer, there's a bug where if somebody joins after the beacon starts playing, they won't be able to hear it or tune to it. So you go to the third tab on the bottom here called Triggered Actions. You're going to add two triggers. You're going to do Perform Command. You're going to do Set Frequency. And this is in megahertz, ADF is in kilohertz, so you need to do decimals. So if we're doing 550 kilohertz ADF, then it needs to be 0.55. Just leave it at AM. I always set the power to 1000 watts because you just want that high connectivity. You can probably set it a little less if you want realistically, if you want the realistic loss of ADF beacon, but then you're going to have to do some testing to make sure you don't lose it when you don't want it to be lost. So setting it to 1000 watts means that people will probably always hear the beacon no matter where they are, unless they're like really, really deep in a valley far away. So it's decimal 55 at 1000 watts, and then we're going to go add another one, and we're going to do transmit message. I'm just going to select that beacon sound, and then we're going to set it to loop. Okay, so we've got
Gotcha.
one half of that down. That's the beacon trigger setup in that with the FARP group here. The other part is in triggered actions. So I'm actually going to name these so I don't lose track of them. Call that you did it, and we'll call this radio items. So we're going to add a new one. This is going to be called the beacon looper. And there's two things I need to do for this. So first, this is going to be the one that controls the main loop. So we're going to say time since flag. Let's give it to flag 9876. I don't know. And we're going to give it about 5 minutes. That's a pretty good number to choose. So 5 minutes is 300 seconds. So we'll say time since flag 9876 is 300 seconds. We're going to do new. And we're going to do AI task push, FARP group, set frequency, clone that, FARP group, transmit message. And then to reset this this condition, I'm going to do flag off 9876, so that turns the flag off. And then I'm going to do flag on 9876, so it turns the flag back on. And one last thing to do to make this thing loop is I'm going to set it to a switch condition so that it just it completely loops back. So the flag goes off 5 minutes later. It turns the flag off, it does the beacon, and then turns the flag back on, and then it goes back to the main condition here. So this is how you set up a looping condition. Now when you do this, you need to have an initial condition. So we're going to duplicate this, we're going to call it beacon initiator. we're just going to completely remove this condition, and that way when the mission starts, it automatically triggers this and starts the loop. All right, so that's if you want to have an ADF beacon, then which we probably should have added that anyways if we're making this in our briefing. And you'll notice as you're making your briefing, like even I, after making all these darn missions, I still find myself going back and forth from the mission editor to the briefing as I add and change things. Okay, so we've got our FARP diagram all set up here. Now we'll go to the next one, airport diagram. Well, we're not using an airport, so we'll get rid of that. Communications. So I only need one of these. I'm going to say all call signs. Any unit. We'll say 251 megahertz is the guard frequency. Oh. And then I'm going to say the MI24E Dragon flight. They're going to be internal frequency 32 kilohertz Fox mic. And then I usually like to say that's going to be channel 2, just to kind of help the flights know what they're doing. And they're an attack rule, so we'll leave that there. So we got the communications plan set up now. If you have any ground JTAC AWACS, you can set the frequencies there as well, and this sort of non-flying channels. So we'll show the weather. So I set it to 20 degrees Celsius at sea level. Barometer was 299, actually this is in millimeters of mercury, so, and I believe the hind uses millimeters, so we're actually going to write it, I'm just going to switch my mission to metric, and we've got 760 millimeters of mercury. Visibility is about 20 kilometers. If you go to, if you use the presets, actually I'll show this right away here. If you look at the presets in the mission editor, and you hover your mouse over it, it'll actually give you a METAR. So you can write that in, write this line into your cloud cover. So you can see that here. I've written that into my my cloud section here now. So my winds at sea level are 2 meters per second. At 1500 feet or 500 meters is 3 meters per second. And then at 6,500 feet or 2,000 meters is 5 meters per second. Others, you can maybe like remark wind, rain, anything like that in here, sleet, but there's nothing, so I'm going to just write none. Then if you're using night flying, you might want to, or you're going to be flying into near the evening, then you might want to mention the illumination, the moon phase, the sunrise, sunset, etc. Otherwise, you can just get rid of all that. This toolbox on the right can be helpful for getting your weather set up. You've got unit converters. There's some moon phases for a few different maps here. I believe you can get to Syria using these same links. So just a couple tools to help you with your weather if you need to. If there's any NOTAMs, you can talk about them here. I don't really have any. There's no really hazards in the way or anything to remark on my mission, so I'm going to leave that blank. No landing zone. No target recon information. I mean, I guess I could take a picture of my target area and put it in here, but I'm not going to at this time. And then if there's any additional information you want to add about the enemy, like say multiple BTRs are near the bridge and will actively engage enemy threats. So will actively engage. Oh. Any actively engage any aircraft. You know, something like that. And then if I want to leave some information about the enemy weapons, I got a BTR here, so I'm just going to get rid of this table entirely. Get rid of the infantry ones. I can put the BTR up there. And maybe I'll even include the fact that I have 6 BTRs. Or I could even be vague and I could say I've got 5 to 7 BTRs. You know, maybe we don't know exactly how many BTRs are there. And then that's it. So we'll put our mission name up here again. So we got cool sortie number 5. Oh. 4th of July. And Dragon Platoon. I'm gonna get rid of my toolbox, my pictures and stuff, and now we have a mission briefing. So I can brief my mission to my my pilots now with all the stuff that we built up here. Okay. So the last little thing you need to do, posting on the website here. This is how you're gonna get the word out about the mission. There's a couple different things, but posting on the website is the first one. So you're gonna put in, you're gonna go to the website and you're gonna go to missions. You're gonna do create new, and it'll give you this page here. So you'll hit, you'll put in your name, your mission. You're gonna pick the company. So if it's for US, if it's for EU, if it's for both of them, and then the RL level. There's a little drop down there for that. If you want a little picture, you can throw a little thumbnail. It's usually a square, so like just a perfect square. You can pick the terrain. So in this case, we have Caucasus, so we'd put Caucasus in here. The mission date. So let's say, I don't know, we're running it on August 23rd at 9 p.m. Eastern. So I'll put that in the date and time here. Max people that can fly this mission, well, there's 2, so I'll put in 2 there. Waitlisted members, you can set this if you want to limit the size of the waitlist, but generally you could probably get away with just leaving this blank. The notification emails, not entirely sure how this works because I don't put my email in there and I still get notifications, but it might just give you more notifications, so you could put your own email in there and see what happens if you want to do it, you know, for science or something. Or you can leave it blank, like I've always left it blank personally. How long is the mission going to take? So, like I said, it could be about 3 hours or so to do, depending on how long it takes to fly out there. Get everything done, the mission briefing, debriefing, etc. Don't change the time zone. We always leave it at Romeo -5. Just some issues with the website syncing that we have to leave it at that time zone for now. Who can view the posting? So who can see the mission itself doesn't mean who can register for it, but who can just see the page. I usually leave it at public. It's kind of cool to let new members or prospective visitors look at all the missions that we've hosted and see what we do at BSD. So I like to leave it as public, just kind of as almost like publicity, internal publicity or something like that. Now, this one is really, really important. The people who can actually register, its default set to trainee. If you want this to be an RL2 mission, then you need to set the clearance to RL2, and that allows RL2s and up to register. And then publicized, if you want to make this website posting without publishing it right away, then you can set it to no. Otherwise, if you're ready to share the mission as soon as you're done filling out this page, then you're going to set this to yes. And then lastly, there's a big text entry area here where you can write a short description of your mission. If you go over on the tabs up top to the flight details, then this is where you can put in your flights. So for this mission, I would say I put Dragonflight here, and then for the capacity, I'd type 2, and then for the airframe, I'd select the Mi-24. And I'm going to just hit the little red button on all these other ones to remove them. And then definitely, it's not required, but I highly, highly, highly recommend that you post it in Discord as well, because some people only look in Discord for the missions. So if you want to post your mission in the Discord, then this is just a quick little example of it. Just the most important thing is that you ping the region that it's for, and that you have a link to the briefing. Or to the sign-up page. Sorry, not the briefing. You have a link to the sign-up page. You're probably going to get more interest if you put a little more detail in there, like when is the mission, where is it, who is it for. So I got RL2. A little bit of detail on the mission, just a really short kind of paragraph. You don't want to have people reading a novel on what your mission's going to be. Just a really short paragraph of what you're going to be doing there. A link to the sign-up page, and then a link to the briefing, so that if people are interested, they can click on the briefing and look into it in more detail. Okay, last section. This is running your mission at BSD. So before you go to the briefing, you might want to consider doing this several hours beforehand if it's your first time doing it. But there's a link here that's going to bring you to the BSD dedicated to tutorial. If you want this link, I'll put it in this briefing posting here, so you can get to the forum page. Only BSD members have access to it, so that should be okay. But if you the link is it's already hyperlinked in here. So if I click on this hyperlink or this picture, then it'll bring us to the forum page that shows us how to connect to the server here, or how to get access to the server, how to be able to change the mission in server 2, and how to upload your own mission into the drive folder, so that you can basically load your mission and change your mission on your own without the need of any high command to do it for you. So Hasty crew briefing. The SOP outlines the full MILSIM level of a Hasty mission briefing. So if you are running an RL1 mission, or really want to follow that SOP, then by all means go ahead. That's what the BSD SOPs are for. It is in a very specific order and has very specific information that you need to cover for a Hasty crew mission briefing. If it's in an RL2 mission, though, it's a little more relaxed. You can probably get away with doing the briefing whatever way you want, as long as you cover the important information and everybody is understanding of what they're doing. If you have a really complicated mission, you're probably going to take a little more than 30 minutes to brief it, so don't be afraid about that. Otherwise, try to keep your mission briefing 30 minutes or less. And then one way to help really make sure that you get your briefing done in time is by asking that everybody holds their questions until after the briefing. That way you're not getting constantly interrupted during your briefing with questions about random things here and there. And then make sure you answer the questions before you get into the sim. So let's have a look at our briefing we put together here. So if I was briefing this, I'd be like, hey guys, welcome to Cool Sortie number 5. We got some North Koreans blocking a town in the mountains, and there's some BTRs that are doing the blocking. So we're gonna search for those BTRs and destroy the roadblock. You can, if you're doing this in Google Drive, there's a little option in the bottom here. You can turn on the laser pointer, or you can just tap the L button on your keyboard. You can kind of point this little red marker around, point at things. It makes people easier for people to follow along your briefing. So you're going to say, alright, you're starting at FARP Dallas. Going to fly up to the north towards the big lake, and then we're going to follow the valley all the way to our target area. And once you reach the target area, we're going to search for and engage all the BTRs here. The target area exactly is Kilo November 709600. And go to the concept of operations here. Say the main mission goal here is to clear the roadblock in the mountains. So Dragonflight, your tasking is to search and destroy all BTRs blocking the route at the target area. So John, you're in Dragon 1, and Doe, you're in Dragon 2. You guys both have 4 ATGMs and 40 S8 KOMs, and you're both loaded at 60% fuel. This is FARP Dallas. We've got Alpha Pad and Bravo Pad, where you each are individually starting at. You take off, you're going to do a pedal turn and head to the southwest into the wind. The field is at 792 feet MSL. If you need to, ADF frequency is 550 kilohertz. And you've got full service fuel and ammo. Just be careful for brownouts when you're lifting. The dust can pick up there quite badly. Then for comms, our command frequency is 251 megahertz uniform. And the internal frequency for Dragonflight is 32 Fox Mike Channel 2. It's 20 degrees out there. Barometer 760 millimeters mercury. Good visibility, 20 kilometers. Clouds are broken at about 3,000, 7,000. And continuous broken clouds 17 to 22 and 34. Winds are relatively calm, 2 meters per second. Oh, you know what? I forgot to put a heading in here. So I probably should put a heading in here. I believe heading was... Make sure you put in the opposite of what DCS tells you. So right now DCS is telling me my heading is 036, but that's the direction that the wind is pointing towards. When you are briefing it, you want to tell them what direction the wind is coming from.
Out of, yeah.
So the easiest way to do that is add 200. So 236 minus 2 is 216. And at 6,000 I have them at 254. Okay, and no other information about the weather here. The BTRs near the bridge will actively engage any aircraft, so rules of engagement, you can free fire them. And just kind of a bit more information on the BTR-80. They got a range of about 1.5 kilometers with the PKTs and the 14.5 millimeter KPVT. There's about 5 or 7 of them in that target area. And at this point I'll say, like, anybody have any questions? Give them a little bit of time, answer any questions that come up. And then once that's all done, then we'll go out and fly. Okay, so you've done the briefing, everybody's in the mission, everybody's ready to start up, and good to fly. If you do not have a pilot as a AMC, or a dedicated person to be the AMC, then you have to be the commander. Here's just a few tips to help you survive your first few times being the mission commander, because it can be a little bit daunting, you know, being in charge of everything. And people will call on you when something bad happens. They need to know what to do about it. So first and foremost, consider not flying if you can, or if you really do want to get in the helicopter, ride shotgun with somebody in multi-crew. Um, you might find yourself having a lot of work to do uh, regarding the game master script or trying to fix something. So it's a lot easier to do that when you're sitting on a 2D screen working in the game master view. Trying to fly the aircraft at the same time as running the mission can be difficult, especially if it's got a lot of moving parts. If it's just 1 or 2 flights, you can probably get away with it, but multiple flights definitely is easier when you're running as a commander. Definitely do not lead a flight when you're the mission commander, unless you have no other choice. Um, have somebody else be the flight lead. Have somebody else make those flight decisions. And yeah, like I said, being in that game master view makes you much more aware of what's going on and how the mission is unfolding. So if you really do want to fly, that's okay. You know, we're here to fly. We respect that. If you really want to fly in the mission, like I said, do not lead the flight. You got enough shit to worry about. Don't worry about being in charge of the flight, as well as being in charge of all the other flights at the same time. You could, if you're flying in like a Huey or other multi-crew aircraft, you consider bringing you can bring a spectator along if you want, and then if you need to step away for a minute, or you need to open the map, or you need to do anything other than fly the aircraft, you can get the RL3 to grab the controls for a bit, as long as you trust that they're able to do so. Because remember, if you do bring an RL3 along with you in your aircraft, you're the one who's responsible for that RL3 and what they're doing in the aircraft. You can write some things down, such as unit names or flags, so that you don't have to jump out of Game Master to fix something if you do have the GM script installed. If you lose your uniform radio, you can't be the commander anymore, so make a plan for this. Maybe if you're... Yeah, if you lose uniform, it's kind of annoying. So keep that in mind if you're flying and being the commander at the same time. Remember that you are playing 2 different people. So your command, if somebody says command from Dragonflight, they're not talking to you who's flying the helicopter. They're talking to command who's back at base, sitting in the command center, watching over this whole operation take place. And the same goes for internal flight. If you're Chalk 3 of Outlaw Flight, and Chalk 1 says in internal comms, be like, hey, what am I supposed to do next? And be like, sorry, I'm not command. You're going to have to contact command on uniform. So just keep that in mind, that you are playing as 2 different people, and you should do so as, or use the radios respectively. And one big thing, this is a simulation environment. We're here to pretend that this is the real thing. So the biggest thing to maintain that real feeling is immersion, and it's really important that you as the commander or the mission host don't break immersion. So nobody knows the things that you do in regards to the mission itself. So if the spawn doesn't work, don't say that the spawn is broken, or something else is broken related to the simulation. You don't want to remind people that we're just in a video game, in a simulation, that things work in program and code. Instead, you can make up interesting little excuses, like if a convoy for whatever reason gets stuck, or they don't spawn or whatever, You could say, oh, the convoy got lost in the woods and they're camping there for the night while they await rescue, so they're not going to be showing up now. That'd be a believable excuse to make for something not working in the mission. Remember that you are a commander sitting in a command center, or maybe you're a commander sitting in a AMC helicopter. If you're sitting in the game master view and you can see all the enemy units that are red, that's something that you probably can't actually see if you were the commander in the command center. Like, you can see the friendly units with the blue 4 tracker, but you can't see the bad guys, so don't talk about them. Like, say there's a vehicle sneaking up on a friendly helicopter. You can provide them that intel, but only if the source of that information is realistic. Like, maybe you have a UAV in the air, and it's like, hey, Outlaw 1 heads up, UAV just picked up a column of tanks heading towards your position 1 mile from the southwest. That's something that you can do. But if you don't have those assets available, then and you see that tank creeping up on Outlaw, it's going to be tempting, but you need to keep your mouth shut and not tell them that that's coming, because then they'll be like, oh, where'd that intel come from, you know? So, just remember, keeping immersion is key to having a believable and great feeling mission for everybody. Okay, so the Game Master function script. This is a very powerful script written by one of our own members, Cake. This script is similar to, if you've ever heard of Arma Zeus mode, which allows you to control the mission while it's unfolding. This script has some of those capabilities in it. And here are some very key stuff that you might want to use in multiple missions. We'll talk about how this script works in more detail. You can find details on this, how the script works, in the ED forums, and we're going to go over the script here in a minute too. But you type in the code syntax. So the prefix is the code that you want to use, and then there's usually parameters that you put in. So if we type in, sorry, you're typing these into map markers on the map. It's probably easier just to show you how this works, but I'll just skip to that in a second here. But useful codes is there's a spawn code, so you can spawn units with this one. The delete code for deleting units on the ground. The activate code, so if there's a late activated unit, you can use this to activate them or force them to be activated. You can spawn CTLD troops on the ground by CTLD GR, blue, and then the amount of troops that you want. So you can create an extractable group of troops on the ground. You can make smoke markers on the ground, set the color, how long the smoke marker lasts. You can create an explosion and how powerful the explosion is. And you can, one of the really handy ones for being the mission host is triggering flags that didn't trigger or that you need to trigger manually. So you just type flag, type the flag number, and you can do true, false, or put a value in there. Okay, so let's go mess around with the Game Master script a little bit here. Okay, so just grab the Game Master role here, and you're gonna see there's not really anything here. So, and then you'll see this, you should see something pop up in the corner that says Game Master function is loaded. Okay, so I put a few units in here. They're late activated. You'll see them in the mission itself if you want to poke around in there and see how they're set up. But if you go to the briefing and you scroll down, you'll see in the situation I've got on the red spawns, you've got BTR, BTR-3, T-72, T-72-3. Under blue spawns, you got that for the Abrams and the Bradley. I've got a late activated unit, FARP group, and then I've got a flag, 50, that says ding. So let's just close out of that, and we'll mess around with those, take a look at them. So the first code that we're going to do is the spawn code. So to do this one, we're going to put a map marker down. I'm going to type equals lowercase s equals, and I'm going to do BTR. And then I'm just going to hit the X button, and it'll spawn a BTR-80. Just hanging out on the ground here. So what that's doing is the equals lowercase s equals is the code that says to spawn, and then BTR is the name of the group that I want to spawn. So if I change that to T72-3, T72-3 is the name of a group of 3 T72s. So if I hit close on that, then I just spawn 3 T72s on the ground here. Now let's say I wanted to do that, but with, and I have them, but I want to face them a different direction, so I'm going to say equals s equals Abram dash 3, and I want them to face face the west. So I'm going to add another equals after the unit name, and I'm going to type in their heading. So I'm going to say 270. So now I've got a bunch of T-72s that are facing the west heading. And the enemy vehicles out of there. So we just started a little ground war with ourselves, or with the these two vehicles now. These groups of vehicles. Okay, so that's how you spawn units. Let's say I want to make some a CTLD group for some helicopters to pick up. So this code is a little bit more specific. I'm going to type equals CTLDGR equals blue equals, and that's the code that I need. And then I'm going to type in, so I would say this is a group for a Huey, so I'm going to say 8 of them. I'm going to do equals, and then the last value is the searching radius. Unless you want these enemies to run toward, or these friendly troops to run towards the nearest enemy, I recommend you set this to 1. So the search radius will be 1. So just to review that again, we type in equals CTLDGR. We type in blue for the coalition. We have 8 units on the ground, and their search radius is 1. I close out on that, and I have a group of troops on the ground here that can be picked up by a helicopter. Now let's say I made a mistake. Oh, I don't want these guys to be here. So I'm going to put a marker on the ground. Looks like it's about 200 meters or so that these guys are going to be. And I want to delete them. So I'm going to type equals DEL equals 200 meters radius. And that'll delete the group. You can also delete the group by its name itself. So say I want these tanks to be deleted, but they're all kind of spread out all over the place, or maybe there's some other units there that I don't want to delete. I'm going to look at the group name down at the bottom here. It says group is Abrams-3 hashtag 001. So that's exactly what I'll type. I'll type DEL, and then I'll type in the unit name. Abrams-3 hashtag 001. And then that gets rid of the tanks only. I can late activate units. So if we go back to our briefing here, we'll see that a late activated unit that I have available is the FARP group. So I got them kind of nearby here. I'm going to type in equals act equals, and then I'm just going to type that group name in, FARP group. And it'll activate that group where I put them. So now I have my FARP guys on the ground here. Pretty simple. what else we got that's pretty helpful here? I can set a smoke marker to go off. So let's say I want a smoke marker to go off at this FARP. I can do equals smoke equals, and then I can just pick a color from the list. So we got blue, green, red, white, and orange. So let's say I want a red one. I'll type in R. And then let's have it run for 10 minutes. So I'll set a timer for 600. And now I got smoke coming out of the ground for 10 minutes. I can make an explosion. So I could type equals exp, and let's say it's 400 kilograms of TNT. And then if I want to add a delay to it, I can hit D, and then let's say it goes off in 5 seconds. So exp for explosion, 400 kilograms of TNT to go off in 5 seconds. I can close that out. And in 5 seconds, boom. Pretty handy little thing if you need to blow something up.
Nice.
You can make text messages, so you can type equals text equals hello world. Show up in the corner there.
And everybody sees that?
Everybody sees it, yep. You can also assign it to a specific group, so if there's a group of helicopters, you can say like equals text equals hey dude. And then you can say Rhino -1. And then it should show for Rhino -1, but because we don't have the helicopter here, it just shows for everybody instead. Another really handy one here is the flags. So we've got flag 50 is ding. So if I want to trigger some flags here, I can do equals flag equals 50, and then we're going to say true. And that'll make my flag go off. So I can do that as many times as I want. Because of the way that I set my trigger up. But you can trigger the same flag as many times as you need to. You set it to 1 maybe? Yeah, same thing works. Okay, that kind of covers the basic stuff of the Game Master script here. So, one last thing to cover in the presentation here. So once your mission is all done, everybody's indexed, head back home. And you've turned the mission to training day if you're on server 2, and you've got the TAC view, and you're ready to do debrief. It's a pretty simple process. The goal is how'd the mission go, what went well, what didn't go well, and what can we do to improve in the future. So I load up the TAC view, and I usually start out with any notes that I want to make. Just be like, hey guys, good job, really timely on this. We didn't lose any aircraft. It was really well run mission. And then I'll say, okay, Rhino lead, let's start with you. How did your flight go? And then Rhino lead will tell me, okay, we left the FARP, and as they're talking, I'm gonna go find the Rhino flight lead in my TAC view. I'll follow along with the helicopter and just kind of review his flight as he's talking, skipping ahead to important parts and slowing down when there's something going on that they want to talk about. Then once they finish talking about their flight, then I'll switch to the next flight lead. Be like, hey, Reaper flight lead, tell me about your flight, and then I'll switch to his helicopter and I'll review his flight during the mission. And once I'm done with all the other flights, then I'll go investigate any more things that I want to talk about. So say there was an AI battle that happened, and I want to go look at that AI battle and review it with everybody. I'll be like, okay, and so this part, these two tanks started engaging each other, and Reaper, if it wasn't for you taking out these first two tanks over here, then our friendly tanks would have been lost, or something like that. Just reviewing key points that people can learn and take away from. Once I'm done saying anything I want to say, then I'll ask the rest of the pilots. So the non-flight leads will be like, hey, anybody else have anything else they want to put in? Anybody have comments, questions, concerns, something that happened that you want to review in the TAC view maybe? And then I'll just let anybody else flying have their say if they want to. If nobody else has anything to say, then it's time to close up shop. Make sure you mark the hours on the log. Say include the briefing time. So if your briefing starts at 8 o'clock, then your log time starts at 8. And then just say, yeah, you can put this many hours in your log. Thank them for coming out. And then disconnect. And then last thing, if you do have a TAC view of the mission, you can put, at the very least, post it in the AAR channel on our Discord for other people to review if they want to. And then that's it. Mission complete. You just ran your first BSD mission, and it was a great time. So, congratulations. And this pretty much wraps up the workshop.